Lise Lebrec from Ottawa. I've heard that a cat's whiskers only grow as long as their body is wide, and that the whiskers should never be cut, or else the cat will become disoriented. Is this true?
Joining us with the answer is Dr. Gillian Muir from the Western College of Veterinary Medicine in Saskatoon. So, first of all, Dr. Muir, how do cats use their whiskers?
Well, cats are nocturnal, as we know, and like many nocturnal animals, they rely on their whiskers a lot when they're moving in the dark. The whiskers actually provide the cat with sensory information about objects that are located immediately around their head.
Well, why do they need the whiskers? I mean, they got great eyes.
They do have great eyes, and in the daytime, I think they mostly rely on their vision. But at night, of course, when they can't rely on vision, they rely on their whiskers. And we know that because if you actually cut a cat's whiskers, you probably won't notice a difference in their behavior in the daytime. They'll be missing an important sense, but they can compensate with vision. But in the dark, the lack of whiskers actually will affect their ability to negotiate obstacles. Well, and in fact, there's one study where they got cats to walk through a maze with tunnels and passageways, and they compared cats with whiskers and cats whose whiskers had been trimmed very short. And what they found that in the light, the cats with their whiskers trimmed completed the maze at the same time as cats with intact whiskers, but in the dark, the cats without whiskers took a lot longer to get through that maze. Wow,
so they use them like feelers. I'm thinking about when I walk down a dark corridor, I might have my hands out on either side feeling the walls.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's important to know it's an important sense for many animals, not just cats. The region around animals' heads, and especially around their mouths, is highly, highly sensitive. There are the long whiskers that we're talking about that provide information about the position of objects nearby, but they also have very sensitive hairs close to their mouth, which is used the way that we use our fingertips, actually. I help them identify the shape or the texture of objects, because remember that most animals use their mouths to pick things up, not their paws, and so they need to have a way of identifying the nature of an object before they actually grasp it.
Wow, one where it is and the other one what it is.
Yeah, that's right. Now, exactly.
Okay, now what about Lisa's question? Do they grow only as wide as the cat's body?
Well, yeah, generally that's true. The longest whiskers that we see on a cat are about as long as their body is wide, or in some cases even a bit longer. But if you look at a cat, any particular cat has whiskers of many different lengths. And it's important the whiskers aren't fixed so that they just project out to either side of their head. They can move their whiskers forward, so they project out in front. So if you hold your finger out to your cat, you'll notice that their whiskers all come forward. So they're actually sort of getting a sense of your finger before they actually touch it with their mouths.
Well, I've wondered, when you see a cat that's really overweight, a fat cat, do his whiskers grow to compensate for the extra weight of the body?
Good question. I know, I thought that too. And actually they don't. There's a little bit of plasticity, but it's mostly, genetically determined that the length of their whiskers, long-haired cats tend to have longer whiskers. What's interesting is that cats that have been blind since birth, they consistently grow slightly longer whiskers. It's significantly longer, but it's only a smaller amount. So there's some plasticity in the system, but most of the time their whisker length is basically genetically determined.
Now some cats seem to lose their whiskers.
They do. The whiskers are just like any other hair. They're simply a very thick and very long hair. But they go through a hair cycle like the rest of their hair. So the whiskers will fall out and they'll start to grow a new one. And sometimes they break their whiskers off, as we see. And those hairs will again replace themselves just like normal hair.
So for a cat, its whiskers are a kind of sixth sense.
Yeah, it's another sense. Yeah, they live in a slightly different sensory world than we do, and they use it. It's an important sense for them, but they can compensate without it.
Dr. Muir, thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Dr. Gillian Muir is a neuroscientist at the Western College of Veterinary Medicine in Saskatoon.
Hi, I'm John Adair from Markham, Ontario. I would like to know why the hole in the ozone layer over the South Pole is so much bigger than the hole in the ozone layer over the North Pole.
Joining us with the answer is Dr. Michel Bourqui from McGill University. So, Dr. Bourqui, can you remind us briefly just what the ozone hole actually is?
Well, the ozone hole is a region, sort of a circular region above the pole at an altitude of 25 kilometers, which forms in the end of winter and extends until the spring. And it forms every year. And it's very big over the southern hemisphere pole. And we see some kind of ozone hole, but much weaker, over the northern hemisphere pole, also starting in the end of the winter and extending in the spring.
Well, how big are these holes, like the southern one and then the northern one?
Well, the size actually of the southern one is about I'd say the Antarctic continent, or something like the North American continent.
Wow,
it's pretty big. And in the northern hemisphere, it's not a big hole. It's just the ozone layer is thinner. It is thinner by, it depends on the years, but it is thinner by between 20 and 50%. So that means there is more ultraviolet going through it.
Now, just to be clear, this is not a hole in the air. This is just an area where you don't find much ozone.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's get to John's question then. Why is the hole bigger over the South Pole than it is over the North?
So the basic reason is a reason related to the temperature in this layer, 25 kilometers above the pole, in the winter. The temperature above the southern hemisphere pole is much smaller. It's colder than in the northern hemisphere. And at colder temperatures, we can have the formation of what we call polar stratospheric clouds. Those are clouds, ice clouds mainly, which are the host of catalytic processes, which basically boost the ozone destruction in this region. So ozone destruction is directly related to the presence and frequency of these clouds.
So it's these very, very high altitude stratospheric clouds that only form in very cold temperatures that are the key to getting rid of the ozone.
Exactly.
Now, why is it colder over the south, though, than it is over the north?
Now, the reason why it's colder in the southern hemisphere than in the northern hemisphere is that we have a heat source coming in this region, and this heat source is very weak in the southern hemisphere, and it's relatively strong in the northern hemisphere, so it heats the region. This heat source is related to waves that come from below and propagate upwards and reach this region and basically heat the region by making wave breaking.
Now, when you say waves, you mean waves in the atmosphere underneath the stratosphere?
Yeah, it's waves that are very large scales. So you can imagine, if you look at a globe, a complete globe, you can imagine a wave along the longitude axis. And these planetary scale waves, they find their origin lower down, around, say, between the ground and 8 kilometer altitude. And then they propagate upwards, and then they break up there, and they deliver heat.
So you mean like the high and low pressure systems that we see on the weather maps?
Exactly. A high and low pressure system. And if you follow a longitude, you will see a lot of these high and lows, and that forms basically a wave on the planetary scale.
Oh, I see. So these are really big things you're talking about here.
Yeah, very, very
large
big.
Waves. And they're carrying energy upwards, and that's heating the stratosphere so it's warmer in the north.
Exactly.
Well, why doesn't that happen in the south?
The reason is that the source is much weaker in the southern hemisphere, and the source of these waves is basically mostly the mountains. You have a lot of mountains in the northern hemisphere, mid-latitudes, the Rockies, Himalaya, Alps, and you have much less or even almost no mountains at this latitude in the southern hemisphere.
Oh, most of the land on Earth is in the northern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere is mostly ocean.
Exactly.
Dr. Bourqui, thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Dr. Michel Bourqui is a professor in the Department of Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences at McGill University. And that's it for this year's Quirks and Quarks Holiday Question Show. Thank you to everyone who sent us your questions. Next week, we have the 10 biggest unanswered questions in the universe. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to Quirks and Quarks, P.O. Box 500, Station A, Toronto, Ontario, M5W1E6. Our email is quirks@cbc.ca. And to get to our webpage, just go to cbc.ca/quirks, where you can subscribe to our podcast, listen to our audio archives, sign up for our weekly newsletter, and check out our latest blog. Today's question show was researched and prepared by Jackie Johnstone. Quirks and Quarks is produced by Jim Hanman, Jim Lebbins, and Mark Crawley, with technical help from Tim Lorimer. I'm Bob McDonald. Thanks for listening, and have a happy holiday.